Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. I am your host, John Espinosa. I am your host, John Espinosa, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am excited for the episode today. As you can tell, it looks a little bit different, right? I have distinguished guests with me today, and this is all around our continuing conversation around everyday leaders. And one of the things that I always enjoy doing is reaching out to people who are leading organizations, who are leading companies, who are leading fraternities in this example. One of the great opportunities that I have had is to connect with people. And today I reached out to my nephew, Brayden, who is a student over at Oklahoma State University up in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And we had a conversation over dinner last week, and he said, "Hey, I have some people that you need to talk to." So that's what got us here today. So we are going to kick off the conversation today just with some brief introductions, and I will go ahead and start with Mark. Mark, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, John. So I'm Mark McDonough. I live just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, probably on the call because I serve as the president of the National Organization for Sigma Alpha Epsilon, chairman of the board. We have fancy titles. I'm the Eminent Supreme Archon, which is a really kind of big title. But what I tell people in the real world, outside of the fraternity Greek world, is just think of me as the chairman of a board of a nonprofit organization with a couple 100,000 members. In my real world, it's a volunteer position for me. So in my real world, I work in engineering in the energy sector. So I'm building and designing mostly EV car charging stations and a lot of energy production in my the thing that pays for the house and the cars and everything. But I've served for the fraternity for about 27 consecutive years. Since I graduated from Youngstown State University, I've served at every level from local all the way up to now the president of the whole organization. First in my chapter, which I'm really proud of that. I'm the first person from Youngstown State to ever be on our board of directors. And in my real world, some of my fraternity experience has definitely paid off because I'm often told I don't come across like an engineer, and I've always taken that as a badge of pride. So that's just a little bit about who I am and why I'm here.
Thanks, Mark. I work for engineers, and I want to unpack that volunteer workforce because leading a volunteer workforce can have its own challenges. So,
indeed.
Thanks for being with us today, sir.
Yeah.
All right, Michael.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John. And thanks to Brayden for volunteering me for this. I also am a volunteer for Sigma Alpha Epsilon. I volunteer at the state level versus at the national level, like Mark. I too have a funky title. I am the Province Archon, which basically just means I oversee at the state level alumni relations and 7 different chapters in the state of Kansas and Missouri. So I have connections and relationships with 7 different universities, everything from 115-man chapters all the way down to a 12-man chapter. So a little bit of the big and a little bit of the small. And I also have been volunteering since I graduated from college. When I got done with my undergraduate experience, I jumped right into the state level support and have been doing that on one form or another for the last 25 years. And then the last 13 years, I've served as the state president as Province Archon. I am in Kansas, just outside of Kansas City on the Kansas side, the better side. And I'm born and raised in Kansas. I'm a true Midwesterner. I love the flatlands and I love the wind. So Kansas is perfect for me. In my professional life, I'm an educator. I trained as an elementary educator in college. And as soon as I took my first post to work with little kids, I said I didn't want to do that anymore. And I actually moved up to bigger kids. So I have been a middle school teacher and principal for the last 25 years as well. The last 16 years as a principal. And currently I oversee a middle school building that has 250 kids in it and 45 staff. And I've been in my position for 13 years.
Awesome. Yeah, the educators run deep in my family as well. So I appreciate, our teachers and all of our educators that are really forging ahead in creating our new next generation of leaders, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Brayden?
Thank you, John. Thanks again, all of you guys, for being able to make some time to come out today. I really appreciate it. My name is Brayden. I'm currently in my last year of undergraduate at Oklahoma State University here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Born and raised Moore, Oklahoma, just a little bit south of Oklahoma City. These gentlemen before you, John, Mark, Jeremy, Kimberlin, all of you guys were kind of the reason that I keep pushing myself to want to lead more and do more within the fraternity and outside of the fraternity, whether it's philanthropy or just my day-to-day life. A little bit about me. I'm a finance major, so I'm looking to go into the finance world, specifically kind of investment banking and hedge funds. But as of right now, finishing my last year of undergrad, just recently got accepted to be on Province Sigma, so state level for Oklahoma and Texas. And then I'm also a national ambassador for SAE.
Awesome. Thanks, Brayden, for, again, organizing this great group of leaders that we have.
Not a problem.
And Jeremy.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Brayden, for inviting me. On the fraternity side, am the director of ritual at the province or state level. I assist a number of chapters in the state of Maryland and Delaware with regards to our various ceremonies and events that take place throughout the academic school year. On the professional side, I am the director and administrator of operations for a multi-site nephrology practice, which is the Nephrology Center of Maryland. And I'm also an adjunct faculty for Albright College, which is in Pennsylvania, in the Department of Business, Accounting, and Economics. Currently, I'm in Baltimore. I'm from Pennsylvania, so traveling to PA is a short 2-hour commute to and from when I am teaching at the college. But I appreciate you guys for inviting me to this session.
Yeah, no, Jeremy, you're very welcome. And thanks everyone again for joining us today and pouring out into all the listeners, everybody who's going to be just really looking at this podcast. One of the things, I did a little bit of research around SAE, and I want to throw that out there for the listeners. Some of the facts, and you guys are going to have to fact check me here, but founded in 1856, right?
Correct.
Okay. And from that time, you guys have had well over 350,000 members. Right now, I think you got about 12,000 collegiate members that are attending universities, and then over 220 chapters, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's impressive. And what a legacy that SAE has. One of the other things that I always, when I talk to organizations, I start with their mission and vision. And one of the things when we talk about leadership is that mission every day, that day to day, and then the vision being you all's North Star. So can we talk a bit about your mission? Just start there and maybe describe what it is, what it means to live that mission.
Yeah. I mean, speaking from the board of directors, and we just had a retreat recently with just the board itself and none of the professional staff that works for us. We completely, I'll step back. I'm a major believer in mission and vision. I volunteer for different organizations. I volunteer for Scouts. I volunteered for my church. I volunteered, obviously, for a long time for the fraternity. And I believe if you don't have a commitment and belief in the mission and vision, it's not an organization that you should volunteer your time towards or work for in some professional cases. And our commitment is focused and united as a board in that we believe in our mission. We have to provide the highest standards, and we're real keen on that focus of like the highest standards, not just good standards or decent standards, friendship, scholarship, service, leadership for our members. And the end of that, our statement, and it's the big point, and I don't know, sometimes our young members don't connect with it until they're a little bit older, is for life. So oftentimes the fraternity in Greek world is seen as 4 years, party time, friends, great, and then I was an SAE or I was a Delta Zeta. And obviously with the men on this call, and hopefully Brayden, this is something we do for our entire lives. My children go to SAE events, my wife goes to SAE events. It's part of who I am and what I do. Otherwise I wouldn't waste my time. I mean, it's not an hour a week like you tell volunteers, like, oh, it's just 1 hour a week. But the mission to me is mission critical, to be a little bit of a pun, play on words there. But if 80% of what we're doing, especially from my sort of, I have a higher view now, not that I'm higher personally, but board of directors, we're looking at it, the holistic organization. And if we as a board aren't committed to our mission and vision, what are we doing? Right? Chapters will never, the 12-man chapter that Michael oversees or the Oklahoma State's a big chapter, those chapters are never going to connect it if the leaders at the top haven't made that firm and finite commitment to mission and vision first. Of course, as a board of directors, I have to deal with budgets and employment things and, investments and all the business side. Sure. I mean, we're a board of directors for a corporation, but the mission and vision drives everything I do. And it's the reason I still do it after a quarter century of doing it. So I don't know, Michael or Jeremy, if you have any other additions to that, I'm sure you do.
I would say there's a big part of our mission that, again, we kind of forget to talk about sometimes because there's 4 key words in our mission that we really hit hard on: the scholarship, the leadership, leadership, the brotherhood, and service. And those are like key tenets to us as brothers of the organization. But a piece that sometimes gets left out of that mission is helping our brothers to develop to their fullest potential. And the reason why I feel like that's so important is because when you think of leadership, leadership is not usually just a singular item. It's not, I'm a leader through scholarship or I'm a leader through service. Leadership is so all-encompassing in the way you live your life, the way you do your job, the way you interact with your family and your friends and your work, that the idea that the guys have to have this whole, more holistic, more all-encompassing experience to really get to the idea of gaining leadership skills and really pushing their potential. And if we don't give them that whole experience, then we are just providing a party school environment, or we are just providing a house that thinks that grades are important because we want to move you on to get you high-powered jobs. And really, Mark, you'll have to help me out with this. I can't remember I think it's Greg Brandt. If I'm misquoting this, I'm going to get probably beat up. I think it's Greg Brandt that says one of the best things that we can do is produce better fathers, better brothers, better leaders, better men versus any other kind of product that we can put out there. Yeah. And so I think that idea of really developing each individual to their full potential is a huge part for us.
What a powerful statement right there, right? And I want to go back to one thing that you said early on, and leadership is a lifestyle. It just doesn't end when we finish college. It just doesn't end when we get our first job, when we have our first child and become fathers and grandparents. It continues on. So kudos to you all for building that foundation, helping to build that foundation, right? Yeah.
And to spin off of that, what you just said, I don't want to knock Jeremy out of the loop here, but that idea of giving them the opportunity, that whole person that's being created, when young guys come and say, well, I want to get involved. What's the next step? Brayden's a great example. When I get out of college, what can I do at the next level? Because I want to stay involved. To me, that is a true marker that we are doing the right things, because it's very easy in an organization this big to just be a number or just be a brother in a seat and show up. We used to use old terms. We would use what we would call brother Nero, brother hero, and brother zero.
Yep.
And brother Neros, they kind of sit in the middle. They do the work. They might show up to an event, but they're never going to lead it. They're never going to really feel it. They're never going to gain from it. And when we have brother heroes that step up and say, what can I do next? What's the next thing I can be part of? How can I continue to be involved? We as an organization see those for exactly what they are, which is the next generation. We have to tap into that. We have to be able to continue to educate and continue to push those guys to their fullest potential, because Mark and I aren't going to be around. Jeremy, we're not going to be around forever. We need the next generation to be ready to go.
Yeah. In those stages too, I mean, you probably didn't do this deeper research, John, but the hero, Nero, and zero, I mean, those are organizational norms. Those aren't just in the chapter you have those types of brothers. The Nero's the guy that does everything for his own personal gain. He does it to further himself. He does it because it benefits himself. The zero's just there. And I can think of my organization now, and there's people that come to work every day and do their job, and you barely know their name, and they don't have aspirations. Then there's people that have the aspirations because all they want is the money and the title and the pay. And then there's people that are building your organization. My big philosophy in life, any organization I touch, is whether I volunteer 15 minutes a year or 15 years, is it has to be better for me being a participant in that organization. And if that's not the case, I got a lot of hobbies. I can do a lot of other things with my time.
That's a great point there. This translates outside, even, for people who are working in companies or have small businesses, right, that are listening to this. You're going to have those level of commitments per se, and that motivation of what makes people show up every day. And to think of being a leader and having to manage or having to lead every one of those in the end. I mean, you don't get to choose a lot of times part of the organization, right? Yeah. Great. Well, one thing that I would like to get into in mission and vision, I've worked with executives. I've worked at the top level, right? We've created a vision. We're into the mission statement. Jeremy, maybe you can help out. How does that filter down? And then, I'd love to hear Brayden's perspective as well, being college, the actual member. How does that mission and vision get filtered down?
Yeah, and I think that's an important part because the ingredient to success of any organization, whether that's private or nonprofit, is that vision, and how that leader provides that guidance, that purpose, and helps others to understand the long-term strategies and goals of your organization, to have a clear vision of what the organization can achieve really comes from your vision and you as a leader, because it needs to help inspire people to follow you along that path. If you can't influence and inspire people along that path, your vision is lost in translation, literally. And I think that's the important part of not only having that clear vision, but also being an effective communicator to translate that vision, that purpose that you have as an organization, of what your 5-year, goals look like, what that looks like for the organization as a whole for success.
Yeah, great. You use the words inspire and influence. And leadership is all about influence, right? So it's that, is your vision big enough to where others can see themselves in it? So that way they, can help us along and their vision is also met while we are meeting the mission of our organizations. So great. Yeah, great points. Brayden, how does that filter down from you, the senior? You're in your senior year. You got a lot of things going on. I can remember my senior year in college. How does that filter down to you, and how does it inspire and influence you to do the things that you're doing for your fraternity?
I think a lot of it is, one of the terms I've heard a lot is buying in. You get out whatever you put in. And a lot of that, for me at least, started with a strong connection with my alumni, making sure that I leaned on them a little bit. They've already been through this. They've already went through all the steps. Lean on them a little bit, see what they can tell me, see what they can guide me with, and then take that back as a chapter, take that back when we're sitting in our meetings and be like, hey guys, this is what they've done. This is what's happened. Let's see how we can apply that to what we're dealing with right now. Let's use what we know and then further transition that into, what we do. I mean, at the end of our, I guess you could call creed, the true gentleman who thinks of the rights and feelings of others rather than his own and who appears well in any company. That right there sticks with leadership, because you can't be a brother Nero or a brother Zero and not think of others instead of yourself. And that applies straight into leadership, and kind of my motto that I've taken through my undergraduate of seek discomfort. Force yourself into uncomfortable situations, force your group or your organization into uncomfortable spots. That way, eventually, everyone feels some kind of permanent warmth or permanent comfort in the situations, and they know how to at least start to address things. And from there, you can really see who wants to be the leaders, who wants to step up, who wants to be the next person in line, and who's just kind of there to follow, to check a box and be done.
Yeah, all great point. I love, and we talked about this last week, Brayden, right? Becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, that's a sign of growth.
Yep.
And as leaders, that is our goal, is to make sure that we are growing in some way. So it's always interesting for me as we have senior leadership all the way down to a current member in school, and the theme of leader, depend on others, right? Who has gone before, all speaks to mentoring and coaching. And one of the things that is critical in any organization is that coaching and that mentoring. So any one of you, I'll just open it up. How do you establish that relationship between coaching and mentoring? What does that look like in your organization? And maybe what's some advice that you could give listeners who struggle with that piece, that, struggle with the fact that, I don't really need a mentor, or, it's intimidating, right, to go and ask somebody to be a mentor or a coach. Can any of you just kind of unpack that for us?
I can jump in as an educator, because I'm doing mentoring and coaching on a daily basis in my school, but it applies very well to my experience and my interactions with the college guys at the chapters that I work with. Whether I'm mentoring a teacher on instructional strategies or the latest techniques that I need to have had in a classroom, or utilizing data to make decisions in class versus emotions and feelings, or whether it's working with kids, when you're mentoring, you are shaping the way they think, is the way I like to look at it. I can show them what I'm doing. I can show them how I'm successful. I can show them the things that I've benefited because I've done the things I have. But if I can't help reshape the way they think about what it is they're doing, then they really aren't going to benefit in the long run. Just as an example, I have a young man at my school, young 12-year-old, who is very easily irritated, very easily set to anger, does not have a lot of support at home. Dad is a very angry person as well. And he threw a die-cast metal tractor at me last week. Missed me, thank goodness, because it would have hurt.
Michael, that's a very Kansas thing to have a die-cast metal
Right?
tractor.
Yeah, right. If
I
you
was
throw a
gonna
toy,
say
if
that.
you throw a toy tractor, you know you're from Kansas. But he threw this toy at me because he had moved himself to anger so quickly. De-escalate the situation, get him into a calm space again, and we sat down and we talked about it. And I took him through what I was feeling and how that what that did to me, and the way it made me nervous, and the way it scared me, and the way it made me nervous for him, and what the consequences could come out of that. And by walking through all that, in the end, when I asked him his motivation again, his motivation went from anger and from frustration to him understanding that his motivation was wrong. Like, that's where he started. He changed the way he thought about the situation. In the beginning, if I'd have said he was wrong, he'd have disagreed with me, right? He was set in anger, he was set in frustration. But by working with him and showing him that there's more to it than just the small piece that he was, I was able to change his way of thinking to where then he had to see it from my point of view. He had to see it from the bus driver's point of view. He had to see it from his parents' point of view. And in the end, when he walked away, he was very apologetic. He has apologized multiple times to me. Knock on wood, we haven't had another anger outburst yet. It's only been a week, but that is progress. So I think that when you're mentoring, it's all about changing perceptions and changing the way they're thinking about the situation, because otherwise mentoring falls on deaf ears. He's not going to change because I tell him it's the best idea. He has to change because he has to see that there's a benefit.
Yeah, I look at the difference in coaching and mentoring in that when you're coaching, from my perspective, and I volunteer a lot in Scouts too, so they have, and other people probably use it too, something called the EDGE method, where you explain, you demonstrate, you guide, and then you enable someone to do something. And I've done that my whole life. I've never taken pride in, I'm the only person that knows how to do this, so that makes me important, because I don't think that's servant leadership. I don't think that's being humble in life in general. So I think we have a vast network of volunteers. We have chapter advisors, we have alumni advisory boards. Our chapters, hopefully, most of them are, not all of them, are surrounded by really good volunteers that can say, here's how you manage a meeting. Here's how you hold your friends accountable to pay bills. Here's how because that's all these things. I always say, men that participate at the chapter as an officer, you're getting like a mini MBA, because you're holding your friends accountable to paying bills. You're dealing with rent situations. You're dealing with conflict within your organization. You're organizing events. You're failing. You're succeeding. You're doing all these things in this little cauldron of the Greek movement, and it's sort of like scar-free. It's not like you're at your job and you're failing and it's a bigger risk, right? So that's coaching. But the mentoring aspect, I look at when I was a young brother, when I went to Youngstown State, I sort of joined the fraternity for all the wrong reasons. I've always been honest about this. It was more of a commuter school, and I didn't want to live at home and have like high school plus. So I wanted to be involved on campus, live in the fraternity house. My older brother was in the chapter, so he connected me to SA pretty quickly. But I never thought of anything outside those walls of my university until I went to our national leadership program, and like my mind sort of exploded with the potential and the network and the avenue that I could exercise myself. But I can remember going to meet at the time the gentleman that's in my position right now. So this is 1993. This is a little while ago. I'm going into my sophomore year, and I keep telling my roommate at the final banquet, I'm like, I'm going to go meet the ESA. That's the title, the nickname for our title. I'm going to go meet him. I'm going to go meet him. And I went up and I was like, Mr. So-and-so, I'm Mark McDonough from Youngstown State. And he said, good to meet you, Mark. And I was like, okay then. And I turned around and I walked back to my table and I was like, I met him. Right. So I've always kept that scenario in my head in the mentorship avenue and how I treat the young men that I deal with in our chapters. In my life as well, I try to be very relatable and human to these people, because I know titles and age and things can get in the way of that mentorship connection. And, I'll always say, I'll be at Vanderbilt University this weekend, reopening our chapter at Vanderbilt in Nashville. So I'm really excited to go do that. And this weekend, I'll say, hey, who's an engineer? Make sure you get my phone number before you leave here. Call me. It's up to you, but you got to call me and I'll be your guy. Like, I'll talk to you. And I've done that for dozens and dozens, if not 100 or more guys, of just professionally, like, I'm your man. Or do you want to do more after you graduate? I also know a lot about that. Here's my phone number. Reach out. It's not like send me an email, because these young guys don't like doing that anymore. It's like, hit me on my Instagram account or whatever. The mentorship I look at as, I still need a mentor. I've been working for 25 years. I've been volunteering for long. I still need a mentor. I have people I call when I'm frustrated or hurt, the guys that have been in my role that I served on the board with as a young board member, those past presidents. I call them and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do about X, Y, or Z. What do you do? And you have to have that in life if you want to expose yourself to humility and understand, like, I don't know it all. I tell people all the time, I got the big title. It doesn't mean I'm any more important than Jeremy or Michael in their volunteer roles. I just have different level of responsibilities. And I was in their roles at one point or another. So I've always approached that mentorship of, I'm Mark. Sometimes I'll get introduced with the full fancy title and it's like, whew, that's a lot. Like, I'm Mark. Also, I have a job. I mow the lawn. I have to clean up after my dogs and I have 2 kids, right? Like, I live a regular life. But I think that human connection to show young men that it's not just okay, but wonderful to have somebody that's a mentor, whether it's in your fraternity life or what your future career might be, because then hopefully they're educated and they have that natural experience of, well, now I want to do that for someone else. So when I'm in my 30s and I'm getting into my career and I'm really starting to get those position changes where you might have people reporting to you or whatnot, or making a little bit of money by that time, that you're still that person of, man, I remember when Mark reached out to me at that meeting. And I'll have people reach out to me years later, and I'll meet a lot of SAEs at all these events we go to. I remember faces. I don't always remember names. And I'll get random kids. I say kids because I'm a little older. Random men that come up to me like, I'll never forget that you reached out to me and you sat with me that one day, or I didn't know what to do and I gave you a call. And, I can coach left and right. I coach basketball for my kids. I can tell you how to run a chapter. I can tell you what the best practice is for being a treasurer in your chapter. That's coaching. I love the mentorship side. I love what do you want to do in life? What are you about? Who are you? What do you want to be? And those, I think it's that servant leadership that I've based most of my life on. Is I want to show you that I'm somebody you can come to. And if I'm the president of the whole thing, then Michael should see that. And Jeremy should see that. And everybody should see that and be like, that's a wonderful way to connect with these young men, and really gives them the example. Because if I'm not doing it, if I'm not laying the groundwork for Brayden to take over one day, right, to be in my seat running the fraternity or something like Michael or whatever, then I'm wasting my time. So you have to provide that mentorship at any moment too. I don't know. Our fraternity has a really great new program that the fraternity and the foundation have come up with, providing mentorship for specific industries: accounting, teaching, engineering, this, that, and the other. It's been a really good program that we started in the last year or two. That's like the formalized of it. I love the instantaneous mentorship. Like this weekend, I'll probably run into some young guy that asks me a question and it'll end up being a 45-minute conversation, right? And he'll maybe get some insight into what he wants to do in the next couple of years of his life or not. But that's what I love, is that sort of organic example, servant leadership thing that really, hopefully, shows people you interact with on the daily, wow, that's really great. And it's not traditional. And this is something I can really get out of this.
Yeah. One of the things that is that relatability, and it's hard for some people, I think, to, between mentoring and coaching. I think that's a distinction that a lot of people struggle with, is just stepping back and listening, being naturally curious, asking questions and guiding, right? I think I heard you use the word guiding there in your edge explanation, but it's one of the things as we talk about the next generation of leaders. And I want you to answer this, Brayden. Listening to Mark and what he just explained, how does that impact you?
I think for me, I did the program he mentioned. I'm assuming you're talking about Career Connect. Yeah. So Career Connect, I did that for a little bit. And then I went to one of our programs, Inner Circle. I went last spring, and that was when it kind of clicked for me that these guys do this for nothing of their own gain, purely to just see the next generation grow. And it wasn't like you had to go chase them down, or they didn't want to talk. They just wanted to talk with the guys that they already knew. It was, they want to talk to the undergrads. They want to have those conversations that you might have 5 minutes and you end up sitting there for an hour and a half just talking and don't even realize it. That's the whole point of that weekend. And it was phenomenal. And that's when it really clicked for me that the guys, like, I still talk to a bunch of the alumni that I met there, a bunch of them. I still talked with them daily. I actually talked to Travis Bullock about a week and a half ago, touched base with him again. And it's just nice for me to be able to, even if they don't mentor, even if they don't coach, even if they're just giving me a little bit of advice throughout life or kind of next steps or what they did or how they looked at a situation, it might not directly affect me, but at least it gives me an idea of where to start. It helps in different areas that I can kind of apply that whole that I was talking to you about when we had dinner last week, compounding success, cumulative advantage, and taking a bunch of little wins and eventually letting it compound to something big. But just take the little wins and run with it. Don't sit there and try to bite off the entire plate at once. Take little bites and work through it as you can go.
Yeah, I tell you, you're wise beyond your years. I told you this the last week. I mean, if people can understand that, the younger generation, they don't have to have it all, right?
Yeah.
There's compounding interest on just those small wins, and we gain confidence, and then we begin to gain more confidence, and then pretty soon going after that vision, we're going after those goals. Motivation only lasts for so long. I was listening to a podcast today from Les Brown, and he was talking about dedication, and this is something that I hear you all, as an organization evolves, and that organization has to deal with all the external things that we have to deal with now, the social media distractions, the distractions that, we have just in everyday lives. One of the things, and Jeremy, I'd like to throw this over to you, is, throughout our lives, we have all had, or at least I have had that one person who I can vividly remember who has made probably a big impact on who I am today. Can you talk a little bit about maybe who that person is for you and the importance, if you don't have that person, the importance of going and seeking out that person?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it's been a number of individuals that have had an impact on my development as of the person who I am today. I'd say K through 12, I was involved in and active in the church. There were the pastor that I was, built a relationship with, along with other elderly individuals, kind of elder in sense of leadership within the church community. And then in college, a number of leaders inside the administration of the university, and in particular with my chapter advisor, who was Ray Soul at the fraternity level, and then as an adult later in life, various individuals at the fraternity level. And I think really what it comes down to is these individuals who have dedicated their time was truly very important to me, because time is one of those things that you can't give back. You can't earn it back. Once it's lost, it's gone. And for someone to take an extra hour or so and dedicate that to kind of talking with me really meant a lot to me. And it also kind of provided that desire for me to want to give back to others. And, one of the things that Brayden and I have just kind of started talking on as far as his beginning of his trajectory and how he's going to explore that. So I think for me that there's a number of qualities that, those mentorships have provided to me and why it's important to me. But I also think what stood out the most is it's not about just them sitting there and kind of guiding you and so forth, but it's also about them listening to you and drawing on the experiences and how you're thinking about things and giving you different ways to kind of think about a situation or kind of look at this outside the box and kind of look at it from this approach and so forth. I think that's also very important too, because we may be growing up with various backgrounds and experiences. We may be approaching things in a very one-sided directional point of view, where others have the ability to kind of look at different perspectives. I think Michael has, touched on that as well. Understanding those different perspectives and how that impacts everyone as a whole, as far as your actions and your behaviors and so forth.
Yeah, that word perspective, stands out to me. And I think, Mark, you mentioned this earlier, when, we mentor and coach, it's gaining that awareness that there are different perspectives out there. And when we talk about perspectives and differencing of opinions, the word value comes to my mind. And as we value the opinions or value and respect others, I know that's something that, within, I think, your mission, where friendship, scholarship, leadership, and service throughout life, and that creates that foundation of valuing those things. So one thing that I'll just throw it out there to the group. What's one piece of advice that you would give? This doesn't have to be current undergrad or anybody out there, any of our listeners, on leadership that has proven to be the most, or giving you the most value in your current state or where you're at?
That's a good question. I would say, I'll be brief, Michael. One piece of advice I would give to me, someone my age, Michael's age, Jeremy's age, Brayden's age, you, John, is whatever you're going to spend your valuable time with, whether it's in your career or at church or volunteering, is dive in the pool, participate. Because the more you participate, the more you're going to, like I think Brayden said earlier, or somebody said, like, you'll get way more out of it the more you do. And that is sort of like an overused term, is the more you give, the more you'll get. But it is 100% true. So on your leadership journey, participate. Don't sit in your own world and fret and overthink and overplan and think, I'll do this when I have enough money, or I'll do that when I have enough experience to get that type of role. Is do it. Participate. Get involved. If you're in your first year at work, get involved. Ask your supervisor, your boss, hey, what can I do more? How can I get more involved in the company's foundation or the company's charitable wing or whatever? The more you participate, the more that'll open the aperture of your camera lens, where you can see, oh, you know what? I don't like what I went to school for, and I don't like what I'm doing every day. I like this. I volunteered for my foundation at work, and I really like that work. Maybe I'll expand to that in my life. But that would be, if there was like one little thing, and you're interested in leadership and being a leader or improving your own leadership skills or abilities, is make sure you focus on your participation in wherever you're in and wherever you're at in your life.
Great. Yeah, I love that. Jump in the deep end there. All right. Michael, thoughts?
Yeah. I apologize, Mark. I didn't mean to talk over you earlier, because I think it's because I'm in education. I don't like to do things alone. I am not a sit in a cubicle, work behind a desk, be by myself kind of guy. I don't even like to have my office door closed, because I have this nagging feeling that people are going to walk by and go, oh, he's too busy for him. So unless I'm on the phone with a parent, I refuse to shut my door, because the idea that leadership is a singular position is foreign to me. Mm-hmm. Leadership has to be done with the people around you. You have to involve those. And I don't mean like the people that work for you. When I think of involving those around me, I'm bringing people into the decision-making process. I'm bringing people into the application of what we have decided. I can't do those things on my own. And so that idea that you're going through the process, the growth of being a leader by yourself, to me, seems counterproductive. I surround myself with brother. Brayden will tell you, and Mark and Jeremy will tell you this too, because they've been around me. I can talk to the wall. I can talk to the tree. I've had great conversations with the tree, because I just get to talk and there's no give and take. It's just be quiet and listen. That idea that you can be friendly and you can outreach and you can get involved with others, that to me is the epitome of good leadership. I can walk into a room with 35 strangers and I can get at least half of them on my side with what I'm talking about. Let's get out of here and go do it. And that, I think, that idea of getting people involved with your leadership, getting people involved with what you want to get accomplished, really drives home that idea that leadership has to be done outside of the vacuum. It has to be done in a living, breathing, actual environment. If I shut my office door and make the decisions and write papers and create items for school, nobody does them. Nobody follows through with. I can create policy, and the kids won't even listen to me, let alone the teacher. But when I bring in a group and I listen to my teachers, I listen to my educators, and I hear what they need and what they feel is best and what is going to be the best application, or even bringing in kids. The best improvement we've had to our lunch program in the last 10 years has been because we put a group of kids together to make the menu change. And the menu that came out of it's phenomenal. I'd much rather have tater tots on a regular basis than boiled broccoli. I mean, who would have thought? The kids are the ones that came up with that. And it's improved our lunch menu. But to do it alone is a foreign process. And I think that's sometimes leaders that do that, they find themselves struggling to get things accomplished. And they find that they are working harder than they have to. And I can tell you from being around Mark and Jeremy, obviously, over a number of years, the idea of committee work, the idea within fraternity, the idea of committee work, the idea of flying across the country to join Mark in an event like he gets to go to Nashville next weekend for. Those are the kind of benefits of being in an organization like this, is that you can join in on the leadership. And it's so tremendous.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old adage, right? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go, take others with you.
100%.
Absolutely.
That collaborative piece, I prescribe to that as well. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor, click on that subscribe button. give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.